Hi all, welcome to day 3 of Perl training on Unix platforms. Yesterday we basically discussed what is a scalar variable, what values it can hold. Basically, it can hold a single value, it may be a string, it may be a numeric value, it can be a mix of strings and numeric values, right? So we discussed about a scalar variable. Today, on day 3, we're going to basically discuss what are the operations we can perform on a scalar variable. How do strings act when digits are found in a string? What are the true and false meanings or values that you get in Perl? How do only scalar, basically we are going to perform arithmetic, relational, logical, assignment, shorthand operators, basically involving numeric numbers. With respect to string, we will perform the operations in a separate day on strings, where we'll perform all these operations on strings as well. Then we will also see how do increment and decrement operators work as well today, right? So let's come into more into how do scalar variables operate. So let's start off today. So what do I mean by an expression with the scalar variable? When I mean an expression with a scalar variable, you certainly can't perform operations on a single variable, right? When I need to perform an operation on a variable, I need multiple variables, either 1, 2, at least more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. Right? So basically, I could either perform addition of the variables, I could either perform subtraction of the variables, I can perform a division, a modulus, an exponentiation, multiplication, etc. So all these examples which I have taken here basically come under arithmetic operators. So today I'll start off with how do we operate with arithmetic operations on scalar variables, right? So let's look at that topic today. So going back to my code today. So let's say I have one variable defined as 100. I have another variable, let's say I'll define it as 200. Right? And remember, you cannot perform a addition operation, any arithmetic operation in a double quoted string. So for example, let's see how this works, right? So if you're going to do this, $A plus $B, you certainly cannot perform an arithmetic operation in a double quoted string, right? So let's see what this output would produce, right? So if you look at it, it did not produce the intended output. So it just printed 100 plus 200 by just substituting the values, right? So basically it was supposed to print, we were expecting 300 to be printed, but it just printed the values of the variables. 100 was printed in place of $A, plus was just taken and printed out as usually, and $B was printed as 200. But we want 300. So let's change the code by removing the quotes, right? So now you will get the output of 300, 200 plus 200, right? So let's see that. Right? So there it is. You get the output of 300. So what was the major point that we were trying to emphasize here is any arithmetic operation needs to be performed without a double quote. If it is in a double quote, arithmetic operations will not work under that, right? So let's perform all the different arithmetic operations over here, right? So let's take another one. Let's do a simple subtraction. $A minus $B, and let's execute it. So here we basically try to subtract two variables and we got the internet result. 100 minus 50, which is 50. We got 50 here, right? So that's pretty much what we expected. Now let's do a division operation, right? A division. Now we should get the output as 2 in this case, right? So let's see. Let's execute it. There it is. So we got the output as 2, which we had expected. Now let's look at the modulus operator as well, right? Modulus. And now we should get the remainder. In this case, it should be, let's say I change this to 60. You should get the remainder as 40. So our output should basically reflect 40. Right? So we use the modulus operator, which is basically the remainder of division. Right? So let's see. So here it is. We got the exact output, 100 by 60. 60 ones are 60. 100 minus 60, 40, which is the remainder. So the modulus operator works pretty much fine. Let's look at the multiplication operator now. Now we should get the output as 100 into 60, which is 6,000, right? So let's have a look at it. There it is. We got the right output here, which is 6,000. Right? Let me just show you that again. There it is. 6,000. Let's also look at the exponentiation operator. Let's just change this values to a small one. The exponential operator is just a couple of stars, and let's see what comes to the four. So there it is, the exponential operation where we got 2 to the power 4, 2, where $a is 2 and b is 4, 2 to the power 4. Here is the output, which we got 16. So these are all the arithmetic operations that we perform on a numeric digits, right? So that basically sums up the arithmetic operations on numeric digits, right? So let's go and see what's the next topic on the agenda. Relational operators. So now let's see how basically relational operators work on digits, right? So what are the relational operators that we currently have? So the relational operators we currently have would be something like, let's say relational, I'll just delete this later, relational operators, right? So what are the relational operators? Basically relational operators are basically used for comparison. Basically if you want to compare two numbers, which is greater, which is less than, which is equal to, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So these are some of the comparison operators, right? So relational operators, something like less than, comma, greater than, comma, equal to, comma, greater than equal to, comma, less than or equal to, are some of them, right? Yeah. So these are some of the relational operators. Now let's perform some programmatic examples of these relational operators and see how digits exactly work with these operations, right? So similar way, we already have the digits defined here. 4, let's say this is 2, right? Now we'll use a simple if loop here to demonstrate all of this, which I'll come to the looping concepts later in this module. So just understand this is a simple if loop. Okay. greater than $B, print you are great. You are great. You are great. Else print you are small. Let me not get this. These are curly braces. Let me just put my semicolons here. Yeah, so here we've defined two variables, 4 and 2. I'm making a comparison. If the value of A is greater than the value of B, then print you are greater. Else, if this condition is false, it will print you are smaller, right? So let's see this, right, how it works. So ideally for us, the output should be printing, two outputs will become high as usual will be printed, and here we will get the output as you are greater, since 4 is greater than 2, right? So let me just copy this code and let me execute it on my Linux box. So there it is. You got the output, you are greater, since 4 is greater than 2, right? So let's just modify that code. Now let's say I make it $A less than $B. Now since $A is greater than $B, and here we've specified the condition as less than, certainly 4 is greater than. So this time you will actually get this statement printed, since this condition is false. So else will only be executed if the above condition is false. So here, if the condition was true as in the previous case, this would have been executed. But here, the condition is false. So the else part will be executed, right? So let's execute now and see. You should get this as the output. Yeah, so there it is. You got the output as expected. You are smaller, right? Now let's take another operator, right? So $A less than or equal to $B. So let's say I want to say both are equal. So 2 less than or equal to 2, which is true. So again you will get this value printed, right? So $A is $A. That means it's 2 less than or equal to which 2. So this will be printed again here. So this will basically be printed for this condition. Let's try to execute this. Right. So let's copy this code here. There it is. Right. So this is the output we got as expected, right? Now let's look at another condition. $A greater than or equal to B. Now if you look at this, is the condition true? Is it greater than or equal to? So this again you will have the same thing printed here because the condition is true. 2 is greater than or equal to 2, which is true. So hence the true condition will be printed again. However, let's try to modify this so that you have this part printed. If let's say is 3, then you will have this printed, since 3 is less than 2, right? So basically it's pretty simple numeric comparisons, right? So this time you should have this printed. Let me just check that. So I'm sorry, this should be printed. Let me just explain that. So we've said is $A greater than or equal to $B. So 3 is certainly greater than or equal to, right? So 3 is certainly greater than 2, and hence you will have this statement printed. So it's pretty straightforward, right? So that's fine. Right, so we've completed the major operations, right? So let's do the final operator, which is equal to, right, $a. So let's put both as equal. Now you should get you are greater printed again, right? Pasting the code here. There it is. It's again printed you are greater because the condition is true, right? All right. So this basically covers the arithmetic operations as well as the relational operators on numeric digits, right? Now let's look at the third point, right? Let's see what's the next item on this agenda. We have something called as logical operators, the assignment operators, and the shorthand operators. So let's come to the logical operators here. How do logical operators behave, right? So what are the logical operators that we have today, right? Logical operators, right, are and, or, not. So these three are the logical operators we currently have. So these are symbolically represented as and, or, not. So these are the ways in which these three operators are represented. Now let's see how we can use this in our day-to-day programming languages for comparisons, right? Now here it was just a single condition, but if I want to use multiple conditions, I can use these logical operators, right? So let's say so basically what this condition says is if the value of a is greater than value of b and the value of a is greater than or equal to value of b, only if this condition and this condition is true, only then will the value be printed. Otherwise you will have this value be printed, right? So let's see this example. Now first, since both the conditions hold true in this case, you will have this output generated, right? So let's do this, right? Let's put my code here. So it's failed due to compilation error. Let me just see where it is. Okay, I know where it is. Just open two brackets here. This is a syntactical error. You can even, it's not necessary that you really have this. It should execute automatically. So let's remove this. Okay. Control A, Control C. So it's just a syntactical error. There it is. So it clearly prints you are greater. Now let's see. I'll just modify this code and say if $a less than $b. Now since both the conditions are not satisfied, it will print the else part. So basically if else is a statement, if condition will only print if the condition is true, you will have this value. If the condition is false, it will have this value. So here we are evaluating two conditions, a greater than b and $a less than b, which cannot happen. Hence it is false, and you will have print your smaller being printed at this case. So basically, just remember that logical operators are used for multiple comparisons, right? So when you just don't want to compare with two operators, you want to put multiple conditions into picture. That is when you actually use logical operators, right? So now you will have UR smaller. You will have this value printed for this piece of code, right? So let's see. There it is. UR smaller. That is what has been printed here, right? So that's that. And this pretty much confirms the AND operator. Now let's look at OR operator, right? So let's just replace it with OR and see how it behaves. Now here, in the previous case, both the conditions had to be true, and hence it was not true, and you got this printed here. You are smaller, right? But now the OR operator basically tells you either this condition is true or this condition is true. That should be enough. One of the conditions should be true. Either this should be true or this should be true, then this would be printed. If both the conditions are false, if this condition is false and this condition is false, then this would be printed, right? So remember, the OR operator, only one of the condition needs to be true, then this will be printed, right? So the one within the if statement, if loop, will be printed. Otherwise, if it is false, if both the conditions are false, the one in the else loop will be printed, right? So let's have a look at an example. So this time here only one of the condition is true, so you will have UR greater, since at least one of the condition is true with the OR operator. $A is greater than $B. Yes, 3 greater than 2, so the condition is true. So naturally one of the conditions needs to be true. Even though this condition is false, it doesn't matter to us, because as per the rule only one condition needs to be true, right? So you will get the output as UR greater. Yeah, so there it is. You get the output as UR greater. All right, so that's about the OR operator. Now let's look at how to use the NOT operator, right? Now let's say, I'll just modify the code. We can also put this way. So what this statement basically means, right? So both these conditions should be satisfied. Is A greater than B? Yes, this condition is true. And is A less than B? It should not be less than, A should not be less than B, which is also true, right? So if you look at it, and it should not, A should not be less than B, which is also true. Not here indicates A not less than B. So here there are two conditions. One, A should be greater than B, and A should not less than B. Should not. Here we use the not operator. A should not be less than B. Both conditions are true, and hence you will have UR greater value being printed here, right? So let's see. So there it is. You have UR greater value being printed in this case, right? So here we've looked at all the logical operators and, or, and not, right? So let's see what is the next topic that we have for today. So I would just like to briefly touch upon these two topics today. So we pretty much completed arithmetic, relational, logical operators. So let's look at, now I'll just be completing these in another session on strings, which we will more frequently use, the assignment and the shorthand operators. I'll be dealing with strings, right? For the time being, let's look at these two topics today, right? The true and false values in Perl and the increment and decrement operators, right? So in Perl, remember, any value other than 0, undefined, and null is a true value. Remember, let me repeat the statement again. In Perl, any value other than 0, undefined, and null is a true value. So 1 is a true value, 2, 3, 5, 10. Anything other than 0, null, and undefined, undef, which is a special value, will is always false. All other values are true, right? So let's see an example what I mean by true and false, right? So you would need to know a bit of Unix here, how I'm going to see this, right? So now here I'm going to execute the same code. Here this is true, as well as this condition is true. This condition is true because not $a is 3 less than 2, and not 3 less than 2. So certainly it satisfies both the conditions, remember. So let me execute this code. And since both conditions are true and you're getting the true value, which is your greater, right? So that means your output, let's execute it, right? It's already on the program. So let me just execute it. ./Perl. So your greater. Now if you do echo $, right? This shows as 0. This is basically a shell variable indicating success. In Unix, 0 indicates success, right? So in Perl, any other value other than 0 is actually success. So in Perl, the variable will be 1, right? So echo $, indicates the success status. So this program was successfully executed. If you get a 0, it is successful. On the other hand, let's say I'll put a syntactical error, right? You will get some other value, right? So let's see. Now, you will get a syntactical error. Just a minute, let me just have a look. Where did I see this? Okay, let me see this. Yeah. Now let me try. So if you look at it, you got a syntactical error here. Now if you do a echo $, sorry, command is wrong, echo, you can see that the value is 127 now, which indicates a failure. So in shell, if it is a success, it shows a 0, and if it's a success, it shows a 0. If it's a failure, it shows a 127. So the reason why you got any non-number other number than 0 in shell is because you executed this in a shell command and you got an error here. So naturally, if it is a failure, you will get any value other than 0. So this basically covers day 3 of a Perl training, where we basically covered all scalar variables, the different operators, arithmetic, relational, and logical operators, and we also discussed about the true and false values in Perl. So thanks everyone for attending day 3 of my Perl training, and we'll start off with day 4 tomorrow with more covering on strings and the different string operations that can be performed. Thanks everyone for attending this session. We'll catch up tomorrow again. Have a great day. Bye.